Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast here to review the second test match between Sri Lanka and New Zealand, which means our friend Michael Wagner is here to review this with me. And Michael, this was, how should I put this, a very one-sided test match. Sri Lanka extremely dominant in this match, literally from the first session. How did you see it?
Yeah. Look, there's a couple of things that happened in this test. First of all, New Zealand fielded like they had flippers on their hands. If you drop 4 catches and miss a stumping in the first couple of hours of a test, then you've got to expect that you're going to lose that test by a big margin. You've given the opposition such a big head start that they will unless they're a rubbish team or you're a really, really good one. You can't give them four extra lives. It's just 5 extra lives. It just doesn't work. And what happens whenever you drop a catch, you've got a batsman who has made a mistake. They've been given a bit of a wake-up call. So they're less likely to make a mistake now. They've also got their eye in. So they're now, most players, after they've been in for 20 runs, they average about 15 runs more than what they started. So 15, 20 more than what they started. So you're turning guys who are averaging 40 into guys who are averaging 55, 60. And suddenly you're effectively creating an army of Steve Smiths that you're bowling to instead of bowling to guys who are good players. You've turned them into world-class players by giving them a second life. And that's what New Zealand did. And, imagine if Sri Lanka was 6 down at lunch on the first day, which they could have been if New Zealand held all of the chances. This is a very, very different match if that happens. But instead, they score 600, for 5 declared. New Zealand's been in the 31 degrees for 2 full days, come out and, at that point there, batting collapses happen to all teams pretty much reliably in that situation. It's pretty much 50-50. If a team scores 600, you're either going to bat reasonably well or you're going to get skittled quickly. And this is, that's what happens. It's, when you've been out in the sun, your footwork suddenly gets slower, your reactions slow down, players get jumpy, all of that stuff happens, and you get out. And it really comes down to terrible, appallingly bad fielding. And that's we said that in the test matches against Australia. We said that in the test matches against England. I said that in the in the matches against Bangladesh. If New Zealand don't sort out their fielding, they're going to go back to being a team that's competing only with the likes of West Indies or when we're playing on a green top at home. If we'll be just one step above Ireland, Zimbabwe, and Afghanistan if we can't catch the ball. And there is no excuse for it. Fielding is a fundamental skill, and New Zealand have been doing it badly for about 2 years now. And it's cost us games, and it will continue to cost us games if we don't get it right.
If anyone in case is wondering, there is a 2-3 second delay, so just be patient with us. I think your name, drop catches, cost matches, pretty right up there with that statement, agreed. But New Zealand traditionally have been very strong with fielding, especially in slips. What has been the difference in those 2 years? What has happened, in your opinion? Is it fielding coach has gone and new ones came in? Who's to blame for this situation? Because in the past, as I said, New Zealand really strong, especially in the slips, very strong with outfield catching in the past. What is the problem there, Michael?
Look, in 2015, the reason New Zealand did so well in that Cricket World Cup is because we outfielded every other side. Yeah. To the point that A.B. de Villiers said, I watch New Zealand and I take notes because that's what we need to be as a fielding side. That was A.B. de Villiers talking about that. You don't get really, that's one of the greatest fielders of all time talking about the way New Zealand fielded as a team, and everyone was on, with the possible exception of Vittoria, who got old by then. But everyone else was. But even then, he pulled off a screamer in the boundary. Everyone else just was really. Now, part of it is at that point there, the team were mostly in their 20s. Now the team's mostly 33, 34, 35, and your reactions aren't quite as sharp. It's the reason why at that point there, you're relying on experience, but it's more than you've got to just be practicing it lots and lots and lots to get. And I just don't think they are. I don't think under McCullum, fielding was a massive priority. He spent lots of work as captain of making the team fielding well. Mike Hesson used to do lots and lots of drills, and a lot of the drills that he did, interestingly, I got to watch him coaching, and the difference between him coaching and the previous regime, the John Wright regime, and I haven't really seen much of Stead, so I don't know. But the difference between Mike Hesson and Stead and John Wright is John Wright was all about traditional drills, and they were boring, and it was punishing mistakes. Whereas Mike Hesson's drills were all games. They were playing games in the outfield. They were all trying to improve their skills, and it wasn't about punishing mistakes. It wasn't making people go and do laps of the field because they dropped a catch. It was about celebrating success. And everyone was trying to – they would have games where they would have to catch a ball and throw it at the stumps, and every time they hit the stump, every time they caught the ball, they got 1 second off. Every time they hit the stumps, they got 2 seconds off. And they got timed. And and they were racing to see who could, with 100 balls, who could get it the best time. And there was competition they were all pushing each other to get better. Now, I don't know what's happening now, but that approach under Hesson and McCullum, where it was positive, competitive, fun, was certainly resulted in a really good fielding outfit. And what we're seeing at the moment isn't working. So something has to change because the fielding has gone backwards significantly. And for the last 2 years, we haven't been a good fielding team. And that's not acceptable for New Zealand, where we pride ourselves traditionally on the 1%. We may not be able to bat. Traditionally, we hadn't been able to bat and bowl as well as the other teams, but we'd made up for that with good captaincy, clever tactics, and excellent fielding. And we managed to win a whole lot of matches despite the other teams batting and bowling better than us because we did the other things well, or we're not doing the other things well at the moment.
Back to this test match, as you said, a lot of drop catches. However, Sri Lanka batsmen did capitalise. The Mendes twins, not really twins, Chandimal, converted their hundreds. They were pretty fantastic. What did you thought of their batting display?
I mean, Chandimal in particular, I thought was outstanding, absolutely wonderful. And we've known for a long time that he can be good. Like he really can be, and he just doesn't always deliver. But when he does, man, he's a treat to watch. He's wonderful. He's a wonderful player, and he's starting to get that consistent. He started off being, I'm going to try and hit everything out of the park, and he had good days and bad days. And then he went to, I'm going to try and defend everything, and then he had bad days and mediocre days. And now he's trying to put the two together, and he's found a good balance. And he's turning into just a really good player. Angelo Matthews, he's the forgotten man of world cricket. Like this guy, in an era where everyone's been struggling, he's averaged 50 at home and 50 away from home in Test cricket in the last 20. His last 20 home tests, the last 20 away tests. So it's something like that. It's close to 50 both home and away. No one's doing that. It's ridiculous. He's so good and no one notices. We don't realize just how well Angelo Matthews has been batting. Yeah. And I mean, because he looks a bit like an all-rounder that's just sort of doesn't really want to bat. When he bats and when he bowls, he definitely looks like a batsman. But somehow he actually produces some really good results with the bat. And he has actually been consistently in the last 5 or 6 years. He's just been consistently good, without ever being great. He's averaged 50 by regularly hitting 50s and 60s. He's a very good player. And I mean, Sri Lanka are turning into a very good team. This team was 3 years ago they were rubbish, and they've really improved. And they've now got. Look, the other thing is, we're talking about their batting, but their spin bowling. I'd said the last game they didn't bowl well. Well, they bowled well in this game. Last game I thought they looked below par, and this time they actually looked like Sri Lankan spinners. And fair play to them. They played really well. And it wasn't. What was interesting is in the second innings, the only way that New Zealand had to counter, and New Zealand did, was to try and hit them off their links. And you saw a much more aggressive approach, and that paid dividends. But it was, yeah, it was finger in the dike stuff. It was way too late.
Well, we're just on that New Zealand's first inning. Sri Lanka just made a lazy 600 declaration for 5. Wow, they just completely crumbled. I noticed a couple of batsmen played a couple of shots. I know De Silva had a field day in the slips.
Yeah.
I think he took something like 5.
Even when he didn't think was a catch, they appealed for LBW. Batsman was given out LBW, referred it. Not out LBW, but caught.
Yes, caught. So he had an absolute field day, incredible. I think it might have been a record for most catches in an innings for a Sri Lanka fielder. But just absolutely ridiculous. New Zealand capitulate like that. Do you think they played a couple of poor shots, especially Phillips, Mitchell trying to hit out, or was it just Sri Lanka just too good with the bowling, or a bit of both?
Look, it's a bit of both. One of the tricky things is if you let the spinners settle. And I mean, I know this is a spin bowler that, and not a very good one. Let's put that out there. I'm not saying this, but if I had a chance to bowl to the batsman, and I knew they weren't going to come down the crease, come down the pitch to me, or move around, they were going to just stay put and just try and get a stride in or whatever. If I knew they were going to do that, I could put the ball where I wanted and cause them problems, right? Even good players, guys that played at a reasonably high level. If in practice I said to them, like, I want you to just not move your feet and try playing from the crease, I could get them in all sorts of trouble. But in a game, they don't do that. They come down and bang you over your head for 6. So, good players will try to against spin, have to try and put them off their line. And the thing with that is when it goes wrong, you look like an idiot. You look like, what were you doing playing such a stupid shot? Well, you've got to try on some of those shots. And a lot of it comes down to how good those spinners are in the air. Like, when you face a really good spinner, it's really hard to figure out where the ball's going to land, because the top spin that they put on, the overspin they put on, or the underspin if they're coming under the ball, makes it either drop faster or drop slower. It will drift left to right, and sometimes depending on how they, if you want, here's a tip for any off spinners out there. If you're watching this, if you hold the ball square on and you spin the ball try and get in the camera, spin the ball like that, you will hardly get it to spin off the pitch. It will only spin a little bit, but it will drift quite a lot. If you want to spin, you've actually got to have your hand more of an angle and come over the ball a bit more, and it will spin on the angle that you're pointing at. It's to do with the physics of it, to do with the spin, how fast the ball's turning versus how fast it's going through the air. So if you want to bowl fast, which you want to bowl reasonably fast, you've got to really rip the ball to get it to spin, but you also need to make sure the angle it's spinning, the plane of rotation, is pointed more towards towards the slips rather than towards square leg. Now, if you adjust that to be more towards square leg, what will happen is the ball will drift in or drift out for an off spinner, in for a leg spinner, drift out, but then will just keep on going. It'll skid through. And if you watch the really good spinners, Jayasuriya is one of them, they'll adjust that plane of rotation just slightly, meaning that the amount it drifts will differ depending on, and so as a batsman, you've got to judge the swing, the dip, the float, all of those sort of things, the trajectory, the speed that's coming through the air, all those things make it really hard to judge where the ball's going to land. Then you've got to account for if it's going to spin or not. So it's often when a batsman looks foolish, it's not because they've been beaten by spin, it's because they've beaten by drift and dip or float. Float is if you're spinning under the ball, it will actually sort of drift and float in the air a little bit more, a bit of backspin on it. And that happens for fast bowlers as well. Bumrah puts a huge amount of backspin on the ball. And for him, it's BCCI. I've got a thing where you can actually read they measure the gravity effect on the ball. So when they do the ball tracking, and so you know if you have a ball that's not spinning, the gravity will be about 9.8 meters per second squared. For a good spinner who's putting a lot of revs on the ball, Ashwin, for example, he will often have as much as 13 meters per second squared. So it'll be dropping almost 1.5 times what the gravity would be, right? So that's why it ends up so much, the ball gets under the bat, and that's something particularly in one-day games, right? Or it bounces up higher than they're expecting because it bounces shorter than they're expecting, and they hit the top edge or the shoulder of the bat and get caught comfortable catch and slip. For someone like Bumrah, as he comes down behind the ball, it's more like 6.5 to 7 meters, or it's going to be short, but it actually ends up a full ball because it comes out of his hand like it's going to be short, but it actually. All right, are we there? Does that come back?
Yeah, well, yeah, you're good, Michael. Keep going.
All right, cool. Yeah, my thing just came saying that I'd lost the microphone. So when you see a batsman getting out to a stupid shot, sometimes that's a batsman getting out to a stupid shot. But most of the time in international cricket, that's actually a batsman being beaten by the ball in the air. So yeah, and the other thing is when you've been fielding for 2 days, it makes it a bit harder to judge that stuff. You know, your brain's just not quite as sharp because you've been out in the sun, it's hot, you know. And similar for when teams come to New Zealand and they play them in Dunedin and there's a southerly blowing straight up the harbour, and, you know, the players are all got their hands in their pockets because of the cold, the hand warmers. It's hard to get your brain working in that situation. You're in the field for 2 days, teams get skittled for next to nothing because their brains just aren't working normally. So that happens, you know.
In your opinion, how important is pace for a spinner? In your opinion,
hugely important. And
where do you think the sweet spot is for as far as Ks? Where do you think the sweet spot is?
It completely depends on the pitch, right?
Yeah.
The more that a pitch will turn, the faster a spinner should bowl. The perfect speed is where the rotation of the ball is slightly faster than the speed through the air, depending on the nature of the pitch. So every pitch will have, there's like a constant, they call it in physics terms, a constant in terms of the amount of the ratio between the speed of the ball spinning, the speed, the surface of the ball versus the speed that the ball's traveling through the air. And the rougher the pitches, that constant changes. You need less side spin to be versus the speed to get it. So in a pitch that's really taking a lot of turn, you want to be bowling quickly, bowl into the pitch, bowl fast, flat, and turn, and get that ball to spin. And the ideal pace is where most of the balls spin and some of them don't, because then if you don't know it, the batsman doesn't know it. The slower you bowl, the more it will spin, and that's great. Except the slower you bowl, the easier it is to actually, the more time the batsman's got to adjust to it. If they're really crapped up and it's coming onto them quickly, and as a young spinner, I bowl way too slowly because I just like to see the ball spin lots. I love them, you know? But you turn a ball square, it just ends up being a wide. This is or it gets smacked for 4. You know, that's it. You absolutely rip one and it bounces on middle stump and goes to second slip and it's called a wide. It's like, well, that was a waste of time. You've got to, I remember Adam Perori once talking to Dan Vittori. Vittori absolutely ripped the ball straight past the outside edge. And Perori said, that's a great TV ball. Now spin it a bit less and get him out. You know, and that's the sometimes spinning it too much actually means that the bit misses the bat, misses the stumps, just goes straight through. You've got to spin it just enough to get to the edge. And the difference between the edge and the middle is only that much. That's all you need to move it. That much more than the batsman thinks it's going to move, or that much less if you wanted to catch the inside edge, you know, or the opposite way. So the quicker you bowl it, you want to get to the point where some of them spin, some of them don't. That's your perfect speed.
Absolutely. please to make sure we have got a lot of viewers watching today. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe. If you've got any questions to ask Michael, please type below and we'll put it on. Now moving on to India, amazingly there was some positives out of this Test match. The second innings, Williamson, Conway, Blundell all found some form with the bat, which I guess is a little bit pleasing that they did find that eventually, heading not so much for this series but into India.
Yeah, well, New Zealand had 8 batsmen hit a 50 in at least one innings out of 4 innings. That's a pretty good for guys that haven't played for the best part of 6 months. That's not a bad warm up. It's a pity that this is a World Test Championship series. It's the warm up, and we didn't get the games that we'd actually scheduled because of the rains. But it shows that the batting isn't far off. I don't think the bowling's actually that far off either. The big thing is the fielding. And if we field like we've got frying pans taped to our hands against India, we will see a repeat of this sort of score in every one of the matches. But we've got enough. And I mean, I think Santner was pretty impressive with the bat in this series. Not on the first game, sorry, in the second game. I think Phillips certainly and Ravindra both showed glimpses as to what they could do. Phillips is probably the standout of the series, actually, both with the bat and the ball. I mean, O'Rourke, we knew that O'Rourke could be really good. Second match, Sri Lanka had come up with a plan to him, so it'll be interesting to see how he responds to that against India, because India, they do their homework. There's no way that they're going to not watch exactly what Sri Lanka did and be putting that in place. So how O'Rourke goes against them will be interesting. But I think Phillips has really turned into probably New Zealand's premier spinner, the way he's bowling. And so that's encouraging, because it's nice to have an offie that can bat. This is pretty handy.
It is. I was going to say to you, who impressed you the most, but it sounds like Glenn Phillips impressed you the most. Who was the one that disappointed you the most, that thought, I thought he would have done a little bit better than he thought?
Overall for the series,
yes,
Ajaz Patel. If you take out that hour and the fourth day and the first test, other than that hour, he was mud throughout the rest of the thing. I mean, the difference between him and Santner bowling in the first day of this test was like a difference between a club spinner and a pro, and Ajaz wasn't the pro. Now, it's all well and good Santner putting pressure on, but he didn't pick up many wickets. So, but then he did get past the bat. He had the stumping chance put down. He had a couple of drop catches in the first test. So you look at it, you say he was creating some opportunities against guys who are pretty good at batting against spin. So that's not bad. But the Indians are even better against spin. So he's going to have to step up from that. But if he can bat a bit and be the fifth bowler, that's really handy. If we're having to have him as the third bowler, that's a problem. So
what? Before we wrap it up, what are your thoughts on Tom Latham? I thought Tom Latham's struggled a lot this series. What did you think of his series?
Well, I mean, he looked amazing in the first test. Look, you get out early as an opener, that happens. I don't want to ever be someone saying, "Oh, well, an opener he failed twice in a series." Well, openers get out early pretty regularly. He needs to be able.
It's the toughest spot to play Test cricket is the opener spot, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, certainly is on a pitch that's doing something. Asia, it's not normally quite as bad. Normally the actually opening it's the hardest place is number 5 often in playing in Asia. But with the way that the way the spinners are bowling now, it's quite interesting. We've seen a shift where it used to be that it was sort of over 40 to over 60 is where the spinners would get all of their wickets. Now the spinners actually are doing better in that sort of over 20 to over 40, the slightly newer ball. And the spinners, because I guess playing a lot of white ball cricket, getting used to never bowling with a ball that's more than 25 overs old, they're doing a lot better with the newer ball. And so, it's swinging back to being difficult in Asia too. because the spinners
Any
might have
final
losing.
thoughts before we head off
Oh,
of
look,
this series or the Indian series?
the big thing is New Zealand need to get rid of the iron hands. You got to actually catch the ball. And I mean, Daryl Mitchell, the guy's got hands like, I mean, they're enormous. It's like he's got school bags for hands. And he shouldn't be dropping 3 catches in a morning. He should be holding everything that comes his way. So we've got to find a way to actually make fielding work better. Because what's happening at the moment is not working. Get in someone like Grant Bradburn or a fielding coach who's actually had success at getting teams fielding well, and just go, right, we need to get these guys fielding better because what we're doing at the moment is not working. Get Mike Heskin back. He's probably very, very expensive now, but get him back. Spend the money, get him back in, and get him to get the team fielding well. Because what we're doing is not working, and we've got to get something that is working because it's letting us down more than anything else. We've got to field well.
You go.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, but the other thing is, I mean, obviously, I'm talking about New Zealand because I'm a New Zealander, but it's worth pointing out here that Sri Lanka played really, really well, and the first test they didn't play so well. This test they really did, and even when things got tough in the second innings, they just, they found Dhananjaya some great captaincy. The way that he brought Fernando back in when New Zealand were getting on top, built some pressure, and then all of a sudden another collapse happened. Just great captaincy, just good cricket, and all of the players almost all of the players did the job that they were asked to do. And as a captain, as a team, you got to be happy with that. If you can look at the end of the day and say, right, well, we had over the series 11 players did the job that their captain was asking them to do, and as a result, we won a test series. Well, what more can you ask for?
Exactly. Well, what's the price of winning a test match in India? Trust me, as an Australian, it's everything. But anyway, a question here. Question for me. Will you be previewing the white ball series between England and Australia with James Butler? The answer is no, because one, I have not watched a single ball of that series. And two, I don't want to see James Butler gloat for 6 months before the Ashes next year. Knowing him, he will be gloating. So no, I won't be doing that. But anyway, Michael, thank you for joining us. If you want to add Michael Wagner on Twitter, please add him at Michael Wagner, me, Lucas Cricket 26. We have the Indian series coming up, which sure Michael will be there for that one. So thank you, Michael, for joining. Very appreciated, and thank you so much for coming.
Brilliant. We'll catch you later.
Thank you, and thank you all to everyone for joining. Make sure to like and subscribe, and goodbye.